All right, as Jeremy kindly said, my name is Ben. I photograph full-time for backcountry.com, and I'm going to show you the least interesting photos you see tonight. But I'm here to talk a little bit about black and white conversions in Lightroom. Before we get into the particulars of what I've prepared, I just want to stress that anytime you're working in a creative application like this, whether it's Lightroom or Photoshop, there are always multiple ways to achieve the same effect. So what I am not advocating to you tonight is that I'm going to show you the only way to do something, maybe not even the best way, but it is a way to go about black and white. So, if you're sitting there and that's not how I do that, that's fine. But hopefully, at least a few of you will leave with a new method on how to do the same old thing. First things first, you're probably starting with a color image. In almost all cases, you'll be starting with a color image. When we make adjustments preparing for black and white, we want to start with that color image. And the first thing we want to leverage is one of the most powerful aspects of Lightroom, which is that we are working in a non-destructive environment. So that means that whatever we do, we can always undo. Especially good for fairly subjective things like black and white, where you may change your mind halfway through the process. So like I said, not a particularly interesting image, but first steps, I always make a virtual copy of the image. It's very easy to do. You can just right-click on the image itself. There's the option to create a virtual copy. The reason I do this is that at the end of my black and white conversion, I have both the original color version and the black and white. I can create as many virtual copies as I want. That allows me to easily do multiple treatments to the same file and to jump between the two or three or four, however many I've made, to see what I've done. It's a great feature in Lightroom, again, totally enabled by that non-destructive editing. I encourage you to use it as well. So you see I have two versions of the same file down in my slide strip. It doesn't matter which one I work on, but I'm starting with a color image. And before I kick it to black and white, I want to make some adjustments to that color image that'll make sure when I make that initial conversion, it looks as good as possible. Those can be whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to straighten it out just a hair. I've actually got a quick preset I made to save me time. So all I've made are some white balance adjustments, basic exposure adjustments, just trying to make that color file look just a little bit better before I step into black and white. Everyone with me so far? All right, multiple ways to do black and white. You can, if you're just in a hurry, you can hit that black and white box up in basic. That'll just kick the image to grayscale immediately. You can probably get a quick feel if it's going to work in black and white or not this way. But what I'm going to advocate to you tonight is down in your color palette. HSL stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. Rather than using that black and white entry at the right side of that panel, I want you to pull down HSL, go to saturation. The first thing I'm going to do is reduce all of these color bars to 0. So I'm going to take that color image and one color channel by one. I'm going to take those values down to 0, which will make it black and white. To save time, I've actually made a preset that does exactly that, so that each time I want to do this, I don't have to drag all 8 of those bars down. So I just hit that, and you'll see all of those saturation sliders go to 0. I now have a black and white image. The interesting thing about this, though, is because I did not do it in a dedicated black and white tool, Lightroom still thinks that I have a color image. This will open up some interesting editing options as we get further into this. But for now, saturation to 0 on all of your channels, and you have your building block for the rest of your black and white conversion. This is not a super compelling option right now, so I need to do some additional work. So now I need to work with my tonal values. So we're going to switch over to Luminance, again, in that HSL panel. Luminance controls, for each color channel, how bright or dark it registers. This works for both color photos and black and white. So in this case, I'm adjusting how they mix into that black and white grayscale mix. If I want to brighten a particular color channel, I grab its slider, move it up. Blue is a great example, since there's a large amount of blue in the sky. You can see exactly what it's doing, lightening and darkening. In this case, I I want to darken my sky. I'm going for kind of a dramatic look. When you're doing a black and white conversion, again, ultimately it's your vision. There's no right or wrong, but if you're going for a fairly compelling black and white option, you need to have some contrast in your photo. There needs to be some black, there needs to be some white. You don't need 80 shades of gray. That makes a pretty flat, uninteresting image. I need to have some separation between dark values and light values. So contrast will get you there. So again, I can move each of these color channels independently. Some will have drastic effects on the image, others will not. If I were working on an image of a person, I would get a lot of use out of red, orange, and yellow, since those will all register in your subject's skin tones. In this case, with a landscape, I'm far more likely to be using things like green, aqua, and blue, since I have trees and grass, I have a lot of sky. Red and orange in this case give me a little bit of adjustment, but it's really only in the rocks on the mountain, and it's pretty subtle. You'll see orange is doing a little bit for me there. But I'm starting to get a nice image now. I've got some dark tones in the lower foreground. I've got plenty of white in my snow. I can quickly check and see where I came from. That's definitely a better image. If you don't want to work by dragging these sliders left and right, we're going to come back to a tool you saw this evening already during Jeff's portion, and that's the targeted adjustment tool. It's this little circle guy in the top of the box. I click it once to arm that tool. That allows me to come onto the image itself, click an area, drag up or down. You'll see it's sampling the primary colors in that region. You'll see the slider change and the histogram as I move. But I can now free to click around on my image and make adjustments without having to worry about which slider I need to click to get what I want. This is a great way to work, especially if you have a hard time visualizing like which color do I need to adjust to get what look. Just click where you want to change, drag it up or down till it's where you want, and you're done. Click that tool once again in the box will disable it so you don't accidentally click around and change something. After the targeted adjustment tool, the important thing to remember is that all of your normal exposure tools, whether it's the options in the basic panel, like your highlights, your shadows, your blacks, or whether it's the tone curve, which you learned about this evening, all of those adjustments are still valid and important to make. You may not get exactly the end results you want working in the color palette exclusively, so plan on coming back and revisiting some of those adjustments to further enhance the effect you're wanting. Maybe I want more blacks, bring some of that in. Maybe I need to add a little clarity, punch that mountain up. That's actually pretty nice. I can reduce that snow a little bit by taking my highlights down. I've got all of those options available to me. Once I've kicked it to black and white, I don't get to just forget about the other half of the editing equation in Lightroom. So remember to go back to those adjustments and see if any of those can further help your black and white conversion. The interesting thing about doing a conversion this way, because we didn't use that black and white tool, as I mentioned, you still have what Lightroom thinks is a color image. So tools like vibrance and saturation still work, but they change your grayscale mix. So you'll see with vibrance especially, vibrance tends to target blues quite heavily, so I'm getting quite a bit of mileage out of that tool, whether I turn it up or down, especially down, getting an even darker, richer sky. Pretty foreboding. Maybe I like that look. Same for saturation. I can turn that up or down and pretty heavily change the look of my photograph. So even those tools that you would normally think of as being exclusively for a color image, very useful in this case. Let's see if I have anything else for you. Finally, because I have a color image, you just saw the adjustment brush. If you're doing some creative work, maybe you've all seen it, a black and white image with a splash of color somewhere. I have two ways to get to that look. You can either come back to my saturation palette. Remember, I reduced everything to 0. I can bring one back up selectively. So if I bring up blue, only the blue areas of my image regain saturation. I can do that for any of my major color channels. My other option, as you just saw with the adjustment brush, if I enable that, I'm going to reset the tool real quick and turn saturation up. I have the option to selectively paint saturation back into my image. And as I do, you'll see color come back where you paint. If you're going for that effect, great. If it's not your thing, then just forget about it. I joke with people that everybody gets one selective desaturation image in their life, and then they're done. They can't do it anymore. But finally, you want to tone a black and white image. You've probably seen classic examples of toning in landscape. That's very easy to do. Right below your hue and saturation panel, you have split toning. That allows you to assign a color tone to your highlights and your shadows, and then if you do both, to change how those blend together. Highlights, see this gray box? If I click that, I get my color picker. I can do any color I want. We'll go warm. You'll see immediately highlighted areas of the photo start to take on that color cast. If I add one to my shadows down here, maybe we go blue. All right, now balance controls the intermix of those two colors in the final image. If I turn it towards the right, positive values, I am favoring the highlight tone. If I turn it to the left, decrease to negative values, I favor the shadow tone. If I want to color tone only one section of the image, maybe not highlights, if I take that color off again, this first gray box up here in these 5, if you click that, I'll reset it to nothing. I can just tone that, and if I turn it up to positive, since I don't have any color tone loaded there, I'm just decreasing the effect that shadow tone has. I can also decrease the saturation for that, get a really nice understated effect. Final thing to remember, all of these boxes in their upper left-hand corner, you'll see the title says split toning. To the left of that, there's this little switch. Looks like a light switch. If I've made some adjustments, maybe I don't remember what it looks like before those adjustments, I can quickly hit that switch and just like a light switch, turn that panel off. The great thing about this method is I don't lose any of my adjustments. If I turn it back on, those settings all come back exactly as I left them. I could close the program, walk away, come back tomorrow, and it would still show up. Any panel that you've made adjustments in that you want to turn off quickly to see what you did, just hit that little light switch, take a look, turn it back on, you're good to go. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.